Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Hey.
Welcome to March.
Oh, it's weird.
I know, well, because we're recording this in mid-February.
I know, but it still feels like 2019 is going very fast.
Is it March that comes in like a lion and out like a lamb? Is today the lionest of the days? This is the dumbest thing I've said in a while.
Fiercest lion.
Oh.
Well, before we get into this week's Dear Krachel topics, we just want to let you know that we have a survey that we would really love for you guys to fill out.
And before you're like, ew, let me ignore what you're about to say, we are not expecting you to do this survey
with no reward.
With no reward at the end. So we're going to be, for everyone who does the survey, it'll be up in the episode description. We'll have the link, so you can just click there. It's not going to be long. Like, it's not going to take you that long to do this survey. It'll take you like 5 minutes.
And honestly, we're doing it so that we can create even more content for you guys. That's great. So it serves you in the end anyway, but we're going to give you a more direct reward.
But yes, we're going to give everyone who fills out the survey will get a chance to randomly, we're just going to randomly pick 5 people to give a free one-on-one coaching session to. So if you want that, it's the easiest thing. Just go to the link in this episode description.
It should take you 5 minutes or less to do this survey.
Yeah. Or if you are listening in an app that doesn't have an episode description, if you're listening to this in real time, like on the day or of the week, in the time frame that this survey is going on, just go to clarityonfire.com, click the podcast tab, whatever episode you're listening to between now and March 12th. If you just click on, the most recent episode, at the bottom of that episode, there will be a link. So you can find it on our site in the podcast tab anytime between now and March 12th. So basically between now and Tuesday, March 12th, you can fill out that survey. Do it now. If you're thinking about it, just
pause and do
it. Come on. We're going to pull 5 random winners. It's going to help us a lot. We'll remind you to do this at the end because we care enough about this enterprise that we're doing to have to berate you about it twice. So anyway, okay, do that. And then let's get into our 3 questions. This is funny. No one gave us a real name this time.
I know, everyone had pseudonyms for everyone.
Everyone, which is fine. That's cool. But I found it interesting that the 3 I picked were all people who would prefer to remain anonymous, which is funny because I don't think anything they're sharing is particularly shameful. But also maybe they just liked coming up with pseudonyms, which I enjoy.
Yeah, they're kind of fun pseudonyms too. So
okay, let's read the first one.
Okay. I've done the whole job hopping thing, and I've realized that I will never be happy with someone else dictating my time and earning potential. But I have a lot of financial burdens, which include staggering student loan debts. I'm unhappy at my job, and I'm not earning enough money, but I like my freedom, and I'm afraid of giving that up. My boss lets me do as I please, and because she can only offer me part-time hours, I get the whole morning to myself. It's great. But I know I can't keep this up. I'm unable to go into more debt to open up my own business, and I'm afraid it would be all-consuming anyway, which is definitely not what I want. I just don't want to be a slave to work. So, how do you know which direction to take when it's a battle of financial responsibility versus values? I don't want to give up my time, but I know I have to earn more money. I've already done some major budgeting and live a very frugal life, which isn't what I want either. Do I just suck it up and do something I hate for a few years to earn some cash to pay down my debt? Or do I stick to my broke, freedom-loving ways, knowing there's no way out from this massive pile of debt? From Broke Girl.
Okay, Broke Girl. BG. I think that you're offering yourself and us a false choice, which is that you either have to take a full-time job and therefore hate it, or be poor but happy, or be like part-time employed and not making enough money but more contented. And I get why you're saying that. As a fellow part Firestarter, I understand the need for freedom. Working is the bane of my existence.
I wonder, broke girl, if you might be part Firestarter, part Thriver, because you said, I don't want to be a slave to work.
Yeah, that there could be a little bit of that going on. But I think that it's a little bit suspicious whenever anyone says something so kind of all or nothing, like every job that would pay me well enough to pay down my debt is one I would hate. I don't think you're allowed to say that, because I don't think you have enough evidence to back that up, because you've never had every full-time job there ever was. So I don't think you're actually completely correct in your assumption that there's no way to have both, like to have something that makes you feel free and doesn't make you feel constricted or like a slave to work, and that also allows you to pay off debt. I have had friends, most of us have friends with a lot of debt. Either we have a lot of debt, or we've had friends with student loan debt. And I've had friends who were perfectly contented with their work and happy with Firestarter energy and paying off their debt. I've seen it happen. So I'm a little bit dubious that it can't also be possible for you.
It's going to be a matter of getting a job that gets as close to your Firestarter values as possible without you working for yourself, which is possible. I know Firestarters who, I'm assuming you're a Firestarter. I don't actually know if she said that, but you sound like a Firestarter.
Well, the whole not wanting anyone to set her earning potential
and hours
kind of like gave it away.
And wanting to start your own business, but being a little bit afraid of that. I know a lot of Firestarters who are happy working for other people. It requires a particular kind of working environment. You already said that you're working part-time for someone now who pretty much lets you do what you want as you please. And I think you are assuming that's just because it's part-time work, but I'm not so convinced that that's the case. I think you could be in a job where your management could have a lot of trust in you and let you have a lot of autonomy and be able to set your own schedule in a way and do it full-time where you can make more money. So I agree. This is a false choice that you have to have a job you hate that pays well, or a job that you can tolerate much better, but that you can't pay off your student loans.
Yeah, that doesn't, no, it's not the only choice. And what I also, okay, so there's that. So one, you need to reconsider your limiting belief. That's what this is. That
all full-time jobs are ones you hate.
And that are going to make you feel trapped. It's understandable why you think that, given your values. I totally understand that. And doesn't have to be totally true. There are a lot of people who have flexibility, autonomy, remote work, that kind of thing. So especially in 2019, like the whole people being able to set their own schedules, asking for flexibility, asking for working from home days, the type of things that help people feel more free, it's only becoming more popular. So I think it's wrong to completely rule that out and just be poor forever because you think that's your only choice.
Right.
The other thing I want to say is that I think you and a lot of people, I have a lot of clients who I have to talk to about this, struggle to figure out when it's worth sucking something up and just doing it, or when it's a real compromise of their integrity and their value system and who they are as a person. And this is when we want to kind of come in and remind you about the whole concept of the shit sandwich, which we've talked about a lot.
I was just thinking that broke girl has a couple of shit sandwiches in front of her and doesn't want to eat either one.
Right.
And every choice that you make in your life is going to come with a shit sandwich. Essentially, if you haven't heard us talk about this before, we just mean it's going to come with some parts you don't like so much.
Well, it's the 20% that you don't like in order to have the 80% that you do. Like everything comes with that. If you want to start your own business, the shit sandwich is you have to undergo a lot of risk and a lot of instability, but the payoff is that you get a lot of freedom. And if you want to be a parent, this shit sandwich is, well, there's a lot, but sleeplessness is probably the biggest one at the beginning. And if you want to have a baby, that's just kind of what you have to do. There's where people often get stuck and where I feel like broke girl is getting stuck is that you refuse to eat any shit sandwich. And you're like, I want to have my cake and eat it too, to use a different pun or a different analogy.
To mix our analogies, right?
Yeah, she's trying to have both. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you do have to suck it up. Sometimes you have to just, it's okay sometimes to work for a few years at a job you don't love if you have a very clear, tangible goal that you are working toward, like paying off debt. And then you can go do what you want. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do things for a short period of time that you don't want to do in order to serve a larger vision. But I think the problem is you don't know if this would be that or if this would be a compromise of your integrity and who you are as a person.
Yeah, I want to lay out what I think is probably a more realistic decision that Broke Girl has to make.
Okay.
Because she's going to one extreme or the other, and I don't think it's quite that. So I think you have a choice between doing a job that may not be your ideal and that you might not like all aspects of because you do have a lot of Firestarter energy and you want a lot of freedom, but you're doing it for a short time with a very specific goal to pay off a lot of this debt so that you have a lot more freedom on the other side.
Right.
I don't think it has to be a job you hate. I think it's just going to be a job that might not be your ideal. That's choice one.
It might be like a bridge job, like a 7 instead of a 10 on the scale of ideal jobs.
Right.
Not a 2, but I think that's what Broke Girl thinks she has to do, is she has to do a 2.
Right.
No. You don't have to have that low of standards. You're allowed to take a 7 if it's going to enable you to one day have a 10.
Exactly. And your other choice is to have a lot more freedom now and to pay off your debt significantly slower, but
put it off until later in life. And
that's also a choice. So even then, I think both of them are valid choices. It just is a matter of which shit sandwich you're more willing to eat. But that hopefully feels a lot more manageable of a choice than what you put to the table.
Yeah. So
which is I'm going to be perpetually broke forever or I have to hate a job.
Yeah. So let me just remind you guys, sucking it up, I want to redefine what sucking it up means. I was having a conversation with one of my clients who will 100% recognize herself if she hears this. And so I will just say, hi, you know who you are. I was talking to her last night and we were having this conversation about how I think in her mind, she thought sucking it up means tolerating something that is completely toxic, that makes her almost sick to her soul, that makes her feel like she's not good enough, that makes her feel completely and utterly drained and miserable and like wants to kind of just give up on life. That's not the definition of sucking it up. Sucking it up means doing something that's like kind of not your most favorite thing, but that you can tolerate for a few months or a couple years or something like that in order to catapult you into a future you really want to have. If you are sucking it up, quote unquote, there's no reason for it. Like there's no greater vision you're trying to fulfill. And if it's draining the very life and soul out of you, that has gone beyond sucking it up. That has gone to sucking you dry. Do you know what I mean? Like it's literally draining your life force. It's completely and utterly devoid of purpose and meaning. It's causing an existential crisis. That's not sucking it up. Sucking it up is just sometimes you have to do hard things and you have to challenge yourself in order to get somewhere better in life. And that's okay. That builds character. That builds resilience if you're doing it for a good reason.
Right. One way of making sure that you're not sucking up something that is really terrible and completely misaligned is to ask yourself, what are a few of my absolute non-negotiables? Yeah. I understand that my absolute ideal job might involve a lot more things than just my non-negotiables, but there are a few things that I know if I don't get those minimum needs met, then I'm going to be miserable and I'm going to hate everything.
And resentful.
Yes.
So what we want to avoid is anything that makes you resentful and completely miserable and like wanting to give up on everything. And I think you have made the mistaken assumption that every single job that would pay you decently is one that would make you feel like that. Completely miserable, giving up, like a 2 on the scale.
Yeah. I have a client that I just talked to the other day who was trying to figure out exactly this. Should I stay in my job that I don't like right now and suck it up, even though I feel very miserable there? Or should I try to find another job that will fit more of what I want while I build my business? And we came up with her non-negotiables. She had 4 non-negotiables, and she realized her current job only met one of them. So it made perfect sense why she was so unhappy. Even though her real dream is to start her own business, this was not serving as a bridge job because it didn't even meet 3 out of her 4 non-negotiables.
And non-negotiables are like the basics. They're not would be wonderful to have in an ideal world. It's like, these are the things I need so that I don't feel resentful.
Right.
That's a baseline.
It was, I can work from home sometimes. It was, I have a manager who I get along with and who isn't micromanaging me. These are not over the top, ridiculous requests.
Okay.
And she wasn't getting them. So I want you to come up with your list, bro girl, or anyone else who's in this situation.
All right. I hope that serves you. And I hope that something that we just said resonates. You know, we like to throw 8 things at you so that one thing sticks. That's our motto. Don't do less. Always do more.
Like
unless you're working, in which case do less. If you're talking, always do more. It's my motto. Okay, here's our next question. I really like this one.
I do too.
Dear Krachel, recently I came across a word that slapped me right in the face. Dilettante. Defined as a person who cultivates an area of interest without real commitment or knowledge. Synonyms: dabbler or tinkerer. Yes, that's me. I've always prided myself on being open-minded, a lifelong learner filled with curiosity, a true Renaissance woman with eclectic tastes. And throughout my 20s, I've strategically explored many career options. Now, at 29, I feel like something should have stuck to the proverbial wall by now, but it hasn't. I still feel like I'm gathering the puzzle pieces. I enjoy a lot of variety in my life, and the winds shift often for me. But I need to be all in, and when something is over, it's over. I'm a Firestarter every time I've taken your quiz, so do I need some tough love and focus, or do I need to reframe my thinking and have more grace for my dilettante tendencies? That's from Frustrated Firestarter.
Okay, frustrated Firestarter. My very, very short answer, followed by a much longer answer. My short answer is the second one.
Yep.
This is about accepting yourself as you are and not trying to become a person who is wired differently than how you are wired. I know that you have taken the quiz and that you are a Firestarter every time, and I believe that's accurate. But if you are familiar with the other categories, I would like for you to look more into the side hustler profile, because I have a sense you might have a secondary profile of side hustler because of your love of variety and growth and dabbling. I think you might be ignoring that part of you or not accepting that part of you.
I also think you might be a P on the Myers-Briggs. Like, the last letter of the 4 is either J or P. I think you might be a P. Just an assumption I'm making. But here's the thing. Whenever I coach someone who has a little bit or a lot of side hustler energy or is a P on the Myers-Briggs, what I tend to find is that I have to coach them so much around the belief that there is something wrong with them for having a variety of tastes and for not wanting to commit to just one thing. And I was about to say I don't know why. Yeah, of course I know why. It's because we pride ourselves as a culture on focus. And it's not efficient or it's not impressive if you're not like a deep, knowledgeable expert on something.
Yeah, we're obsessed with expertise as a culture.
Yeah. And so we're holding ourselves up. Okay, I was supposed to say we're holding ourselves up against other people, and we're comparing ourselves all the time, and we're finding ourselves lacking in comparison to a generalized, definition of what it means to be focused or what it means to be impressive or what it means to be an expert. And the reason I laughed is because I was thinking about Jonathan Van Ness's Instagram, where from Queer Eye, come on, you guys have to know JVN by now, right? And he said, comparison is that girl doing the most while doing the least. And I was like, yes, that's it. So there's that. Also, I want to say, I think the word dilettante says it all. Like, it says everything you need to know. The whole word in and of itself is so freaking uppity and annoying, right? And like the connotation, it might not be the definition, but the connotation of dilettante, when I hear it, is laziness. When I hear that, I hear, oh, you're lazy.
Because you can't commit to
Because you can't commit to something, which implies that the only way to be in the world, the only way to learn or to be curious is to be completely and utterly single-minded, to want to become an expert. And if you're not that, then you're somehow wrong or you're somehow unimpressive. It's just so freaking uppity and annoying. It's like, oh, you like art history? Well, my dear, have you ever been to Paris? No, you've never studied at the Sorbonne. Well, if you've never been there, then how could you possibly know anything? You're such a dilettante. You know, like,
Yes.
it's just, I feel like you have a gremlin who's like a really like judgy French woman, do you know? Who's like smoking her cigarette and be like, darling, it couldn't possibly. Like, I don't know. I'm characterizing your gremlin. You can characterize her however you want, but she's kind of a nasty bee.
Well, and in this definition that you gave of dilettante, it says someone who cultivates an area of interest without real commitment. But later on, you said when you're interested in something, you are all in. But then when it's over, it's over. And that's acting like if you're not committed to something forever, then what is the point of it? Don't even bother. So in a way, you're not really acting like a dilettante because you do have commitment. And it's okay if your commitment doesn't last for your entire career or your entire life. That does not mean that there's no point and that you should ignore those interests that you want to dabble in and that you want to tinker with. That doesn't make them less than because you're not doing it as an expert until the end of time.
I also think there's a lot of successful, quote unquote successful, I just mean people who you know, like who are well known, who were dabblers, who were tinkerers. I mean, I think about Leonardo da Vinci. You guys remember him. Well, you don't remember him. You weren't there. But you know him for, well, like Kristen would know him because she doesn't know jack about art history. She would know him for what? Like some paintings?
Yes.
The Vitruvian Man?
Yes.
Like Dan Brown, right?
I did go
the
through
Da Vinci Code. That's what Kristen knows about Leonardo da Vinci, probably.
Right.
But he was also a very famous engineer. Did you know that? And an inventor. And totally, like, he did sculpture too. He did everything you can actually, like, everything you can think of, he did it. And that's impressive. That's cool. That's interesting. I feel like often dabblers and tinkerers are the type of people who just have an insatiable curiosity. And there's nothing wrong with having insatiable curiosity. It's a cool trait.
I'm remembering a previous podcast that we did. Maybe you'll remember the exact title. I think it might have just been called How to Find Your Passion or something like that.
It's how to figure out what you're meant to do with your life.
There you
I'll
go.
link to it. Yeah.
And we give a concept. I'm not going to get into it here because we spent a whole podcast talking about it. But
it's
about
a Liz Gilbert
right, it's not our invention. About jackhammers versus hummingbirds. And that's a teaser, so you'll go listen to it. But I'm just going to tell you that you're a hummingbird.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So listen to that podcast. I think it's going to give you a lot more acceptance so that you can allow yourself to be a tinkerer and a dabbler and a side hustler.
And I think
that's okay.
I think what you'll learn, because again, you're 29, I think what you'll learn is that a lot of the things that you've been dabbling in for the past decade or whatever are going to actually come together in some way and serve you in whatever you decide to do.
There is very likely a golden thread that ties many of those things together if you get down to the core.
And that doesn't mean that it's all going to coalesce into something that you end up doing forever. I don't believe that. I believe that if you have side hustler energy, or if you're a P especially, but honestly, if you're a hummingbird, which is 95% of us, you're not going to commit to one thing forever. And that is okay. I don't know how many times I've had to say that, but apparently it's not yet enough. We just have to keep saying it, that there is no one thing you're supposed to be doing. And there's nothing wrong with you for cultivating multiple interests and just allowing it to evolve over time. The only reason you think it's wrong is because you're in a culture that assumes that anything other than a perfect, linear, logical resume is incorrect. And I say that that's just as lame as the French gremlin.
This is one of those things that I've had clients say, I've heard you say this probably a dozen times. And finally, I'm starting to believe it.
Yeah,
so It's okay. You might have heard us say it before. You probably will need to hear us say it again in the future. But I want to just plant a seed that this is an okay way to be in the world. Yep. You don't have to believe me yet. You will in time.
Okay, so this last one is kind of long, so we're going to split it up as we read it. All right, I'll start. Dear Krachel, my entire life, I've always loved learning. I excel at it and enjoy sitting in a classroom, soaking up knowledge, doing homework, writing essays, solving math problems, and so on. I relish proving my mastery of subject material through acing exams or receiving high marks for an eloquently written paper. If being a student were an actual paid profession, I'd sign up in a heartbeat.
I've job hopped in various industries and positions, from admin assistant to assistant store manager. And I've recently been speaking to people from different walks of life to learn about their careers, hoping that a profession would strike my fancy. But none of these quote-unquote real jobs ever spark the same fire I get from being a student. In between job hopping, I invariably find myself back in school, either in a formal degree program or just taking a college course here and there. I already have a master's degree, and right now I have strong thoughts of pursuing a JD or PhD, aka more school. I know, sadly, that I can't be a student forever because it just isn't financially viable. But I don't want to be a professor or a researcher, and none of the careers I've explored sound appealing to me, or at least not as appealing as going through more school. At times, I feel really lost. This mid-30s female forever student would really love to hear your thoughts. The forever student.
We have multiple sort of, not contradictory, but just, again, you could take it or leave it or pick what works for you. But okay, here's my first thought. Yeah, I also love being a student. And if you could have paid me to do it forever, I totally would have.
Amen.
I loved school. So here's the thing, though. If you had asked me if I'd rather go back to school or do any of the jobs I've had up until now, I would have said, oh my God, I want to go back to school every time. I would have said that. Now, I don't feel like that. And the reason is because I feel like the values and the things that I loved about school, I am getting met in my current life. And so I'm not denying that you've done what you said you've done, once you've explored a lot of career options and you've talked to people and you're just saying, hey, nothing has sparked my interest quite like going to school has. And I get that. But I think sometimes when you're talking to people and you're exploring different careers, you're talking more about what the career is rather than how the career works or how you do it or the environment in which you do it. To me, it wasn't just this lifelong learning and the studying and like that I liked about school. It wasn't just the subject matter, though I loved learning, history and art history and English and all that stuff. It was really fun. What I actually really liked about school was the combination of structure and freedom. I liked that you were only in class like a couple hours a day or maybe like 3 hours a day. And then the rest of the time you could kind of just structure at your own will. You had freedom. And it was like this nice bubble where it was like real life, but not really in the real world. It was kind of a nice bubble removed from that. And most jobs don't work like school, where you have that much flexibility and autonomy, but with built-in deadlines and with like very clear requirements and very clear expectations and with assignments that you do on a very regular basis. Like it's a really nice blend of those two things. And a lot of jobs won't give you that, or it's hard to find that in a job. But that's why I decided to create my own job where I actually do feel like that's how I'm living now, which isn't to say you have to start your own business in order to get that forever student. It just means that I think I would be curious to ask you, if I could have a one-on-one conversation with you, I would ask you, what is it about the environment of school that you like and the setting more so than what you're studying? And has that been something you've really thought about deeply when it comes to what kind of careers might actually scratch that itch for you?
Yes, fully agree. Additional point.
Okay.
As a also wannabe forever student, I applied to grad school. I think I lost count how many times I applied to grad school. Never actually went to grad school except for my coaching certification program. So I understand. I really believed for a long time that going back to school was much, much better than any job.
And it was the only way you could be happy.
Exactly. And if you had asked me, I also would have said I have no interest in being a professor or teaching. I just want to learn. And yet, a lot of what I do now could be considered a form of teaching. I would say podcasting, I would say some of the programs that we do, I do end up doing quite a bit of teaching and educating people about concepts related to personal development and consciousness. So I want to challenge your statement that you said at the end of your form, which was, I don't want to be a professor or teacher or researcher. And I can understand why in the most linear and obvious way of doing that. You know, from what you've seen, that doesn't appeal to you. But just like we said to Broke Girl earlier, who said, I don't believe I could have a full-time job that I wouldn't hate. And we busted through that and said, I don't know if that's true. I also want to say, I don't necessarily believe that any kind of teaching or research job you would hate. It might just require a little bit of outside of the box thinking. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying, let's not limit ourselves by saying every single job that relates to that is off the table. Because whenever I hear a blanket black or white statement like that, I have a hard time believing it. And I want to say, really? None? No way of doing that would be interesting at all to you? Just to open up the possibility so you don't shut yourself off from something that could be really cool if you thought about it a little bit more out of the box.
So what's coming up for me when you're saying that is that if she listens to that and is still adamant that, no, I don't want to do that, you guys. To me, that's just more proof that my theory is right, which is that it's not about what she's doing. It's not about how much she loves academia. It's about how academia makes her feel and the structure in the environment and sort of like the values she's getting met while she's there that she hasn't been able to see lived out in the real world.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. Yes. My last thought is you did not say this, but I get this sense that you might be a thriver. Or you might have some thriver energy.
You got some real thriver energy.
Because there seems to be a part of you that is just not interested in working.
Oh, girl, I feel you on that.
As fellow partial thrivers, we understand.
As real dilettantes.
We really are. So if that is true, if you are a thriver, at least in some way, shape, or form, then it might be something to think about that your love of learning and your craving for that kind of academic environment doesn't necessarily have to connect to your job. You could have a job that fulfills some other needs and desires of yours that allows you to continue to take classes and to continue to be in the world of academia as your passion and hobby outside of your working experience. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't necessarily, I think we all assume if I love something, then I have to make a career out of it. And if you're a thriver, which I have a hunch that you might be, that might not work well for you. Putting pressure on the thing that you love to make you money might make you not particularly excited about it.
Might be why she's saying she doesn't want to be a professor or a researcher.
Right. So I don't know which of these is going to make you think and spark some aha moments for you. But again, we're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks and hoping that one of these perspectives will resonate.
I feel like our style of advice giving is like turning on a blender without the lid. And it's just like, bon appetit.
Take what you want.
Lick it off the walls. Take what you want. Come on. Okay, so can I make a little bit of a statement? Because as we were talking about this, I feel like it's just very, very common. Actually, you know what? Have you ever republished your blog about going back to school? Didn't you do that recently? Or are you thinking about doing that? Like people who are thinking about going back to grad school, or should I go back to grad school, or should I get another degree?
I have not republished that recently, but that would be a good one for me to
How about we commit to doing that next week?
Yeah.
Because you have an old blog coming up next week. So how about Kristen republishes her old blog about should you go back to school?
Or not.
Like if you're considering it, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like, I don't love my job and honestly, it sounds more fun and more enjoyable to go back to school. And I think that we have to do it for the right reasons. We can't run away from life by taking on another 50 grand in debt.
Yeah, my blog is all about examining your intentions before you commit to going back to school.
Yeah.
Because school might be the answer or it might be a distraction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will publish that next week. So that'll be a follow-up for the Forever Student.
Okay, cool. So, all right. As we're wrapping up, reminder. Okay, well, actually, before we remember, if you have a question or a conundrum or something you want us to weigh in on, you can submit it for future consideration for next month's episode of Dear Krachel. We're always so thankful for everybody who submits, and we're sorry that we can't answer everybody's question every time. We try to pick the ones we think will be not just useful to the asker, but to the listeners as well.
And if you are one of the 3 people who we answered your question and you want to give us an update, you can send us an email at contact@clarityonfire.com, or you can leave a comment on this episode on our website, because we would love to know, what did you think? Was this helpful?
Yeah. And of course,
share your response with us.
you can always leave a comment regardless of who you are and just say, hey, this really resonated with me.
Yes, please.
What have you. Okay. So remember, take our damn survey.
Please.
You can get both of the. You can get the demands and the nice request.
Good cop, bad cop situation going on.
And enter yourself into the chance to win a free coaching call with one of us.
Yes, please. Again, it will not take much of your time. It's
like
very helpful to us.
Less than 10 questions, and some of them are like single answer, like just like yes or no or something.
It's single-digit questions.
Yeah.
And they're not very hard. It's just to help us help you more, and it's also to help us find more cool people like you.
Yeah. Oh, also because, okay, I'll tease this, and they'll really want to do it. We are considering creating a community aspect of Clarity on Fire where we help you make friends in your area who are also fans of Clarity on Fire. So we want you to take this survey. Take this survey, everyone. Take it.
What kind of accent is that?
I think I'm trying to do an Irish accent. I'm not sure it's working very well. Okay, take the survey. Because, and tell us where you live. There will be a question about which major city you live nearest to. Because if and when we ever get our butts in gear and create this community,
we want to know the places where there are enough Clarity on Fire people to really get this thing going.
Yeah. So if you want to make friends who also buy into this and who are thinking the same deep thoughts and having the same questions, and you are kind of feeling like you're lacking belonging, which I think a lot of us are experiencing, then help some sisters out. Okay.
All right. Thank you in advance for taking our survey, and we will see you on Tuesday with my replay blog about whether or not you should go back to grad school.
Or any kind of higher education.
Exactly.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.